Here we go. Okay, hi everyone. I am Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and welcome to my live. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing the 5 things I'm going to be sharing the 5 things that we need to understand and implement in order to succeed really on any diet. So when it comes to a diet and success, first of all, what does that mean? Well, a lot of people, when they go on a diet, it's for weight loss. Here in this challenge this month, we're doing the 28-day anti-reflux plant-based challenge. So the goal is healing, right? We're trying to heal from the effects of reflux and heal other reflux, GERD, LPR related symptoms, hiatal hernia related symptoms, and other digestive distress related pain and discomfort that is a result of those different conditions. So the goal is healing. And so, of course, we want to succeed, right? And so if we can find a diet that's going to give us the results that we're looking for, then really the true way to have long-term success is to stick to that diet, right? Hi, Todd from St. Thomas Virgin Islands. Welcome. Guys, go ahead and drop, if you want to, in the comment section below. Let me know where you're from, and I'll give you a little shout out. So that's success on any given diet, is to get the results that we want, whether it's weight loss or healing or energy, whatever your goal is. If you're getting the results you want, then you want to be able to stick to that diet long term. So that would be success. And so then how do we stick to a diet long term? That becomes the question, because a lot of people can have success on any given diet, right? Whether if they're trying to lose weight, for example. But then the common problem becomes is keeping that weight off, right? Because they hit their goal and then they go back to eating the way they ate that got them overweight in the first place. So then how do we adhere to that diet long term? How do we stick to that diet for the rest of our life? So that then becomes the question. So I'm going to be sharing the 5 really just encouragements and inspirations to keep you going in terms of sticking to a diet like this diet long term. After all, this particular diet, a plant-based diet, I mean, agree with me if you agree, it seems extreme, right? I know that I've shared this before, that I researched a plant-based or a vegan diet for a year before I was actually bold enough to try it, because it seemed so extreme, right? And what was I afraid of? What was I afraid of? Well, I'll tell you what I was afraid of. I was afraid of failing. Because I'd been on diets before. Some of you can relate to this. I'd been on diets before and was not able to adhere to them long term. In fact, a lot of diets I failed after a short, number of days, maybe 2 or 3 days. And it was like, forget it, I can't do it. And so a plant-based diet seeming like the most extreme diet of all, in my mind, it was like, why would I even bother trying a diet like that? I will never be able to adhere to it. By the way, I'm drinking the Threes Company green smoothie this morning with some variations. This actually has a handful of microgreens in it that I bought at the store. I don't like to buy microgreens because they're expensive and you can make them yourself so cheaply, and I have all of the equipment to do so. But every now and then I'll buy them if I'm not sprouting and put them in my sandwiches or wraps. I love them, or in my smoothies. There's so much nutrition in those microgreens, sprouts. So anyway, I really, it took me a year to have the courage to try a plant-based diet for this one reason. I was certain, I was convinced, I knew without a shadow of doubt that I would not be able to adhere to a plant-based diet. Well, it turns out it's not nearly as hard as I thought it would be. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. And if any time during this live, if you guys have comments or questions, go ahead and post them. I'm sitting right in front of my phone, which means I can see the comments, so I should be able to. respond to your questions as they come, as long as we have a decent connection, which when I started the live, it didn't look like we were going to, but now it seems to be doing fine. So, number one. Hi from Wales. Welcome. From Cardiff, Wales. Welcome. Okay, so number one is, let's see, I've got my notes here. Okay, so how to succeed on eating a given diet. Number one is obviously the food has to be delicious, right? If you're on a diet and you're absolutely loving the food and it tastes amazing, are you even going to feel like you're on a diet? Are you going to feel deprived if the food you're eating is delicious, right? So that's number one. And when it comes to plant-based food, I know that a lot of people have this stereotype of vegans that all they eat is carrots or lettuce or whatever. And that's simply not true. Now, for those of you joining me on this 28-day challenge, we do have an added level of challenge with this diet because we're eliminating common trigger foods. So, if you're eliminating, tomatoes and you love Italian food, that makes it a little bit more challenging. If you cook with garlic and onions every time you go into your kitchen, then that makes this a little bit more challenging. You have to kind of relearn some different ways to do this. So yes, it is a little bit more challenging, but that's okay. We can do this. So if you're wondering, well, what do vegans eat? If it's so delicious, Pam, what do vegans eat? Well, you can go on your computer right now and just Google, let's say, take a look, vegan food, and hit the images button. And just take a look at some of the pictures people have uploaded of their vegan food. You will see a rainbow of color. You will see food piled high on plates because on a plant-based diet, the food is so much lower in calories that you have to eat more volume in food in order to meet your caloric needs, which is what we're going to talk about next in number two. But you'll see just beautiful, delicious, mouth-watering, colorful, gorgeous foods. You're not just going to see carrots and lettuce. So that's number one. The food has got to be delicious, which brings me into number two, which is it's got to be satisfying. So again, when you're on a plant-based diet, which is by definition is a high carbohydrate, low fat diet, because when you're eating primarily whole plant foods, foods within the plant kingdom are primarily composed of carbohydrate, then they have a little bit of protein and a little bit of fat. So if that's your diet, then what you are digesting is primarily carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat. Now there are some exceptions. Some plant foods like avocado, coconut, olives are higher in fat. Some foods like beans, nuts, and seeds are higher in protein. So there are some variables there, but primarily speaking, when it comes to eating whole plant foods, you're eating primarily carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, and a little bit of fat. That's the breakdown of the food you're eating. So all plant foods have carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So you're getting all three of those in your diet, but you're getting them large portion carbohydrate, smaller portion protein, smaller protein, fat, because that's just the breakdown of plant foods. So number two is delicious. Number two is satisfied. So how do we then become satisfied? Well, we meet our caloric needs. That's how we become satisfied. Candy says finding dressings for salad are difficult. Yeah, Candy, it's particularly difficult within this challenge. And I only listed one dressing in the files that can be adapted a little bit. But the reason it's so difficult is because oils are a trigger food, so we're eliminating those from pure oils like, vegetable oil, canola oil, olive oil, avocado oil. These oils are a trigger food for GERD, so we're eliminating those. We're also eliminating vinegar because of the high acidity. Now, a lot of people with GERD can tolerate vinegar. Many cannot. If you have LPR, especially, you cannot tolerate vinegar because as it goes down, it activates the pepsin and begins that activating process of enzymating your flesh, basically, in your esophagus. So we eliminate vinegars. So now you've eliminated oils and vinegars. In order to make salad dressings, you have to get a little bit more creative. I will share my plant-based ranch recipe. It's got hemp seed in it and it's got some herbs in it. So as long as we eliminate the garlic and the onion from it, it'll still taste pretty ranchy, but it will have eliminated those common trigger foods. So I will definitely, I will post that in the description box below. Actually, I'll post it up in the title, Candy, when I'm done with this video. I'll post, what will I post? The recipe? No, I'll post it in the description box. Okay, so anyway, your food must be satisfying. So how do we eat a diet that's satisfying? How do we make sure that we're satisfied? Well, first and foremost, we have to be making sure we're eating enough food. And like I said before, you have to eat larger volumes of food on a plant-based diet, which again can be additionally challenging for those of you who have to eat smaller portions because of delayed stomach emptying, which is a common symptom or condition that goes hand in hand with GERD and LPR and other digestive conditions. So again, it doesn't mean you can't do this, it just means you have to get creative, which means, you know, if you're gonna make a big smoothie like this, maybe you're gonna break it down into, 4 different jars and sip it over the course of, 2 hours. Of course, liquids, you probably don't have to do that with liquids, but you could do the same thing with your food. So maybe you make one big meal and you eat it over the course of 2 hours. Is it normal to still reflux during the healing phase, especially in the first few days of starting? Oh, of course. You may continue. It's just going to depend on the person. It's going to depend on the person and the number of different digestive conditions you have, the degree of digestive distress or injury for you. Some people will go on a diet like this and they'll feel better like that. They'll notice results like that. Their symptoms will go away and they'll feel great within a day or 2. Others, it might take a month, 2 months, 3 months because there's so much healing that needs to take place. Others may never get relief from their symptoms until they address their hiatal hernia. So they've addressed healing the gut, decreasing the inflammation, maybe overcoming things like constipation and bloating, which all are going to be important. But maybe their stomach it's still herniated in the diaphragm. And so just because of that anatomical position, you now have pressure around your stomach, pressure in your diaphragm, maybe pressure on your lungs or on your vagus nerve. And just the very act of the stomach sitting in the chest cavity like this, if you're new to me, I'm going like this because your stomach, when it's herniated, it pushes through your diaphragm like that. So your diaphragm sits here, your stomach sits here, and when you have a hiatal hernia, it actually pushes through the hole known as the hiatus, and it sits like that. Okay, and so you've got this nerve on your stomach called the vagus nerve, and so now has pressure on it, which can create a whole host of symptoms. Your stomach sitting in your chest cavity now can cause chronic belching, frequent belching, and then of course pain and tenderness to all of those tissues because they're in a place where there's pressure on all of them. So, so it can be normal to still have reflux. I want to say your name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. I'll say it's Sean Lloyd. It can be very normal to still have refluxes. It's really just going to depend on the person. My personal experience when I went on this diet for my GERD was that a lot of my symptoms improved within 2 or 3 days. A lot of the symptoms improved within 2 or 3 days, like the heartburn, for example. It improved to the point where I barely ever got it. Unless I ate like raw garlic and onions, then it would return. But for the most part, I wasn't having it on a daily, regular basis. But I still continued to have some just mild nausea, indigestion, and the frequent belching. So it wasn't until I was actually able to reverse my hiatal hernia that I was able to overcome that. So the plant-based diet did a lot for me. I overcame constipation and bloating, which was huge. I mean, I always looked like I was 8 months pregnant, and I always wore pantyhose and Spanx and all of those slimmers to try to hold all of that in, which was actually very unhelpful for my hiatal hernia because that supports your hernia, just pushes it up further. So we're going to be talking in depth about hiatal hernia in week 4 of this challenge. Okay, we're going to focus on the nutrition for the first 3 months, and then we'll be talking about hiatal hernia in week 4. Okay, and I'll be sharing everything I know. All right, so 1, food must be delicious. 2, it must be satisfying. So there's 3 ways to achieve true satiation, and that's to meet your caloric needs. Oh, cool. Hi, Sean. Meet your caloric needs, meet your nutrient needs, and then activate your stretch receptors. So if you're meeting your caloric needs on this diet, which means you're eating enough food to meet your caloric needs, then you will by default most likely meet your nutrient needs, right? Because you're eating an abundance and a variety of plant-based foods which are filled with nutrition, vitamins, minerals, all of that you need. So you'll meet your you'll meet your nutrient needs. And then if you're eating that large volume, by default, you also will activate those stretch receptors and meet that requirement, which means you will achieve satiation. So if your food is delicious and you're satisfied and you don't feel deprived, are you gonna be more likely to succeed on this diet? Of course. Are you even gonna feel like you're on a diet? No, because there will be no deprivation. You won't have that little voice, at least in time, telling you, oh, you shouldn't eat so much, or oh, you shouldn't eat that, or oh, you're bad because you should be eating a smaller portion, or you should be counting your calories. You won't have that voice anymore because you want to eat large portions, because the food is healthy and you should be eating an abundance of it. Hi, Wendy from Northern Ireland. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy the live. So, there is an exception to this. So when I'm talking about meeting your caloric needs, first of all, how do we do that? Well, it's going to be different for everybody depending on your activity level, depending on your size and your age and so forth. So there is a website, there are several. The one I use, or at least when I got started, was called chronometer.com. You can go on there and create a free account for yourself, and you can input everything you eat in a day, and it will tell you how many calories you're eating, and it will tell you your breakdown of carbohydrates, fat, and protein, and your nutrients and vitamins and minerals and all of that. But really what you're looking for there, at least the point that I used it, use Chronometer, was to make sure I was getting in adequate calories, to see for myself that I was meeting my protein needs, which actually on a plant-based diet, if you're eating a variety and abundance of plant-based foods, you outdo your protein needs, because there's protein in all plant foods, even fruit. So as long as you're meeting those caloric needs and you're getting in enough food, which means, for those of you with delayed stomach emptying, which will begin to heal most likely on this diet. I say most likely because I don't know you, and I don't know other underlying conditions that you may have. So if you have SIBO, if you have a H. pylori infection, if you have, Crohn's or colitis, some of these different conditions, you may have trouble on a plant-based diet really meeting your nutrient needs, because there could be reasons why your body isn't absorbing those nutrients optimally. Low stomach acid is a really common way for people to become nutrient deficient, because their body is not digesting the food optimally and then absorbing the nutrients optimally. Okay? But it's my belief that trying a plant-based diet is the #1 thing that people should do in order to effectively heal the digestive system. Wendy asks, is it vitamin B12 that you need if only eating plants? Yes. Yeah, so, and we'll talk a little bit more about vitamin B12. Well, I'll just say really quickly right now. So on a plant-based diet, typically people like myself who eat only plant foods, we do supplement with vitamin B12, because vitamin B12 is a microbe in the soil that has been kind of cleansed out of our food, because food goes from the soil and then it gets washed multiple times, and then you bring it home and you wash it, and there's no vitamin B12 left on plant foods by the time it gets to your kitchen, unless you're growing it yourself or you're getting it from a local farm or something like that. Vitamin B12 deficiency is frequently and commonly deficient across the board between plant eaters and meat eaters. So it is smart to, it's very smart to supplement with vitamin B12. I do. And you don't have to be a fanatic about it. In fact, if you over supplement with vitamin B12, that can be dangerous as well. Sometimes vegans will go in and get their blood work tested, and their vitamin B12 levels are just off the charts. And that can be bad. So really, you just need to take, you can get a shot a couple times a year, or you can just take a supplement once a week. it's not like your body just goes through it and then you're out of it every day. So it accumulates and sticks around, so, you know, for a period of time. So you don't have to be a fanatic about it. Anyway, so food must be delicious, and it must be satisfying. So keep that in mind, because if you don't meet these first two things on a plant-based diet, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you decide, I'm hungry all the time, that plant-based diet, Pam's crazy, it just didn't work for me, it may just be you're not getting in enough calories, okay? Some of the most satiating foods are your starch-based plant foods. So beans and potatoes and sweet potatoes and corn and rice. These foods are extremely filling, and they're full of nutrition, as long as you're not slathering them, you know, in oil and butter and sour cream and that kind of stuff. Okay, so number 3, bring my notes back up. Number 3 is it must be realistic. Okay, so this is where we start to dive into, you know, how different people are different, and they have different lifestyles, they have different schedules, they have different family dynamics. So I don't live alone. I have a husband, but he's very busy. He's never here. And so I pretty much cook for myself. When I cook food, it is for me. So that's my family dynamic. I don't have 12 kids. I don't have to feed a bunch of people living in my household. So it makes it really simple, and I get that. But, you know, several years ago, I've been vegan for going on 6 years now. I mean, that was different. We had, my daughter lived with us for a period of time. I had a full-time job where I had to, you know, get up early and make my food and pack it and take it to work with me. So you definitely have to look at your circumstances and figure out how you're going to make this work for you, right? Meal prepping can be very advantageous in situations like that, where maybe on one day you do a lot of meal prepping, pre-chopping your food or pre-packing your food for the week or even for a couple of days. That can be very helpful. So you just really have to be creative, take some time to ask yourself some questions like, how am I going to make this work for me? How am I going to make this work for me so that it's realistic? So when we talk about must be realistic, we have to look at time, we have to look at money, we have to talk about availability. You know, some places don't have all the same foods that are available to me, may not be available to you, and so maybe you have to order some things online. Maybe you have to make, you know, an hour-long trip once a month to a local grocery store because there's nothing near you. You have to ask yourself these questions. Where am I going to get my food? How much is it going to cost? What can I afford? Some of the most common and frequently available plant-based staples around the world are the cheapest. Things like bananas and beans and pasta and corn and oatmeal, potatoes. Potatoes are a huge staple in my diet, and they're filled with nutrition. They're highly filling, and they're really cheap. And I buy the organic ones. They are more expensive than the inorganic ones, but they're cheap. A few years ago, we grew them in our garden. I don't have a garden now because I live in a high-rise apartment, but we grew them in our backyard. And it was so fun. It was so fun. Oh my gosh, if you guys have never grown potatoes before and you have an opportunity to do so, we grew them in buckets. I got some free black planter buckets from a friend of mine who just had stacks and stacks and stacks of these big planter buckets, like 12-gallon buckets, 12 gallon, 50 gallon, 12. They're like this big. Wendy says, never wait till you are absolutely starving. You make poor choices. Yes, that's so true. That is so true. Yeah, you might grab something that's easy and convenient and quick, or you might go run out to drive through. Yeah, so you have to get that through your mindset that I have a choice here of eating something that's beneficial to my body or non-beneficial to my body. And if you can get to the point where you believe that they're both equally delicious, right? And that can take some time. Cleansing the palate on a plant-based diet can take 1 to 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the person, where you actually just start to really enjoy the food that you're eating. It tastes amazing. But yeah, Wendy, you're right. So what was I saying? So these buckets, these big black buckets, we filled them with dirt. We put the potatoes in the bottom, and then you keep like pouring dirt on top of them, and then they keep growing. The plant grows taller and taller and taller until it gets to the very top, and then it's full of dirt. And the beginning potatoes are like clear down here at the bottom, and then the plant comes up, and then it dies off. And in the fall, you dump that thing out, and you've got all these potatoes. It's so fun. We used to grow potatoes in my mother-in-law's garden too, and I would go out with that pitchfork and harvest them in the fall, and it was like digging for gold. I just loved it. Anyway, they're full of nutrition, they're highly satisfying, and they're pretty cheap. They're pretty cheap, especially if you grow them yourself. Well, that's not true. Actually, to buy all that soil to grow our own potatoes, I figured I probably could have gone out and bought them, and it would have cost just as much. So anyway. All right, so yeah, you have to figure out what's going to be realistic for you and get a game plan together. Get a game plan together and really kind of prepare yourself, because the more prepared you are, the more you're going to set yourself up for success. All right, which takes me to number 4. So number 4 is, and by the way, these first 3 things, delicious food, satisfying, and realistic, those 3 things alone are going to really set you up for success, because again, if it's all 3 of those things, because you put a little time and preparation into it, you're just not going to feel like you're on a diet. There will be no deprivation. So number 4 is you must have inspiration and education. So you're trying something new, right? Not only is it new, it's something that has a bit of a stigma, a bit of a stereotype, right? You yourself have probably known a vegan or a vegetarian, or you've had just kind of a mindset that they're weirdos, that they're wimpy, that they're not healthy. My experience, and I follow a lot of other vegan YouTubers, and theirs is the same, that their health has done nothing but improve. They've gained strength, they've gained the ability to exercise and to recover quickly from exercise. They have more energy, and we're just able to really begin to live our lives with more fullness because we're not so handicapped by poor health. Right? Some of you know what I'm talking about. Like if you've got really poor health, it really holds you back, right? Like if you're tired, you don't feel like doing anything. You do the bare minimum. And then you just want to lay down and take a break. You don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to see anybody. Ooh, choking on my green smoothie. So when you begin to get your health back, you have energy, you feel good, you look good. You really just want to dive deeper into your life and really start living, right? Because you don't have that disease holding you back. So that's been my experience. And really, I would have to say that one of the really key things that helped me when I got started was this idea of being inspired on a daily basis and learning on a daily basis. And we live in a we're really fortunate. I mean, if you have a computer, if you have a smartphone, you can find people all over Facebook and especially all over YouTube, just like me, who are coming on and sharing this valuable information with others. And you can use that as a source of both inspiration and education. Some people will come on and they'll just share their stories. Oh, this is how I overcame my arthritis, and this is what I'm doing now that I don't have fibromyalgia, and this is how my life has changed now that I no longer have to take all these medications. And that will really inspire you if that's coming into your life every day because you're following somebody that's inspirational in that way. Or you could follow somebody that's very education oriented and they're sharing, this study and that study and what this clinic is doing and what this doctor is talking about over here and what this article said and that kind of stuff, and really just begin to learn about the human body, about disease, and how it relates to nutrition. Wendy says, make it fun. Yeah, that's the key, really. If it's fun, then you'll get up every day and just look forward to it. So find a source of inspiration, and it shouldn't just be you watch a podcast and you're done. You need daily inspiration, right? How many of you have ever sat before a public speaker or a podcast, or it could be anything, and you got really inspired, right? I can do this. If they can do it, I can do it. You just have that welling up, that flame is just fanned within you, and you're so excited and you just feel so confident. I can do this, whatever it may be, whether you're going to, change your career or change a relationship or reconcile a relationship or lose weight or whatever it is. I can do this. You get so inspired, right? And then 2 days later, what happens? You completely forget about it, or a week later, or a month later, or whatever. is because we need repetitive, ongoing, we need to feed ourselves with that inspiration. And so if you connect with that inspiration on a regular basis, you'll stay inspired. And fortunately, there's tons of inspiration online. There's tons. If I don't inspire you, find somebody who does. You like to set goals and timelines. Oh, and that is key. I try to do that too, but I'm terrible at it. But that's key. I mean, if you don't know where you're going, I always say in order to get somewhere, you got to know where you're going, and that's what goal setting is. If you're going to get somewhere, you got to know where you're going. So you first have to define where you're going. What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish? Why am I even doing this? Where am I going? So yeah, you've got to set up those goals, and the timelines are that's going to help you really just break it down into those action steps. When am I going to do these things? What am I going to do, and when am I going to do them? And that's, right there, Wendy, absolutely. I mean, that's the key to success. You got to know where you're going, and then you got to decide what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And if you do that on a regular basis, you'll just be more likely to keep moving forward towards that goal. And as long as you keep moving forward, you'll get there, right? The only thing that's going to stop you from meeting your goal is stopping. Like, stop moving forward. But if you keep moving forward, you'll get there eventually. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And we got to keep taking those steps. So anyway, yeah, you've got to have that repetitive daily source coming in, inspiring you, teaching you, really motivating you to stick to it. Which brings me to number 5. And this is so important because, after all, number 5 is, so number 4 was must have inspiration and education. And number 5 is you must get results, right? So let's say you go on this diet, you take my free 28-day challenge, and your goal is to heal, right? But let's say, a month, you're into it a month, and you're just not getting the results. If you're not getting the results, one, it may not be the diet for you. 2, there may be underlying conditions. But let's say you are getting results. If you're getting the results that you were looking for on a particular diet, that is going to motivate you to continue with the diet, right? And then all of this combined together. So let's say like a person goes on a really crazy, let's say they go on a highly restrictive, like a calorie restriction diet, and they're either eating 500 calories a day, and their goal is to lose, all this weight, and then they hit their goal and they lose all of this weight. But that diet wasn't realistic. They can't stick to it long term. They got the results that they wanted, but it's not realistic. They can't stick to it long term. They can't stay on a 500 calorie a day diet for the rest of their life. They just can't. Your body will scream out to you to feed it until you go crazy and you feed it. So it's comprehensive, right? It's holistic. It's just not one thing or the other thing, and it rarely ever is. It's holistic. And so really it's these 5 things combining together. The food must be delicious. It must be satisfying. It must be realistic. Get those daily sources of inspiration and education streaming through you on a repetitive basis. And, once you start getting those results that you want, that's just going to be it's not really the icing on the cake. It's really the whole reason that you went on the diet. But that is going to motivate you then to continue. It's going to motivate you to continue with this diet because you got the results that you wanted. And by the way, you're not hungry and you're satisfied, and it's totally doable. All of these other things come into play. And so then there you are. I mean, for me, just weeks into a plant-based diet, my life was transformed. A couple months later, it was even more transformed. And by the end of that first year, I couldn't even believe I was a totally different person. I mean, besides the weight loss, one of the biggest changes for me was the increase in energy. I had chronic fatigue. I was taking lots of medications. So I got off all those medications. I overcame the chronic fatigue, and I just was able to begin living my life. I was able to begin living my life. In 2017, I decided, I began walking, and then I started running, and then I was like, I want to start competing in 5Ks. I raced in 13 5Ks in 2017. I did one every month. registered for a race, and I competed, and I ran in every one of those races. I didn't stop, and I didn't walk, and I didn't take a rest. I ran. That's not me. Oh my gosh, that is so, if you guys only knew, that is so not me. I couldn't even walk a short distance before I went on this diet. I certainly couldn't run a 5K. And by the end of that year of running, my goal was to run a 5K every month. I started placing. In my category, which is women ages 40 to 50. I started placing like in the top 6, and then in the top 5, and then in the top 4. And I had one race left. To complete my my 12 races in 12 months, which actually I ended up doing an extra race, so I ended up doing 13 races. But oh my gosh, I wanted to place third so bad, because if you placed first, second, or third in your category, you got a ribbon or a trophy, and you might even get to stand on a little podium, as they call out your name and you hold up your ribbon and they take your picture. Who cares, right? Oh my gosh, it's so stupid, but I wanted it so bad. I wanted that ribbon so bad. I wanted third place so bad. And the only reason that I was shooting for third place is because in the previous 3 races, I came in 6th, 5th, and 4th. Literally, in the previous 3 races, I came in 6th, and then 5th, and then 4th. And so I just wanted that white ribbon so bad. And guess what? When I crossed the finish line and I was trying to catch my breath and compose myself, my husband came up to me and he said, "You did it." Because he was watching the analytics, and he saw that I was the 3rd person in my category to cross the finish line. So, of course, I was pretty emotional. But anyway, if you knew me, you'd know that that's just not me. That's just not me. The previous 10 years before that, like I said, I was a mess. And I'd gained a lot of weight. I mean, just running to the end of my driveway would have been really problematic. So Simona wants to know how fast you ran 5K, if you remember. Yeah, my final time in my last 5K, and by the way, my last 5K was the last time, that was in 2017. It was in September of 2018, and that was the last time I have ever ran, with the exception of just last week. I went for a short run just because I was feeling like it, but I met that goal, and that was it. I put away my sneakers and I quit running. And then I focused on yoga and volleyball and other things. I still exercise. But anyway, Simona, my time on that final 5K was just under 31 minutes. I think it was, I can't remember the exact time, but it was just under 30. It was just, actually, that's wrong. That was about, I broke 31 about my 4th 5K from the end. So it was between 30 and 31 minutes. I can't remember the exact time, but anyway, yeah. Okay, so that's it, guys. So if you're new and you're following along and you haven't joined the group yet, I'm streaming live from my fan page, and then I'm sharing this into the free 28-day challenge Facebook group. So you can still join us. I've put the link in the description, the title of this video, so you can click on that to get signed up. I hope you will. If you want to come in and just kind of test the waters and see what it's all about, that's cool. You're welcome to. But I would encourage you, if you're considering trying this, to really embrace it and to dive in and to try it, because that's the only way you'll know what a plant-based diet can or can't do for you, is to really just apply it, and apply it wholeheartedly. So if you're still messing around with a little, a little milk and dairy here, a little cheese there, a little fish and chicken here and there, you're really not on a plant-based diet, and you're not going to know what the diet can do for you if you're just kind of playing around with it. Some people get great results just by cutting back on the meat, dairy, and eggs and eating more fruits and vegetables. So, I mean, for some people, I think that's great. But really, you won't truly know what a whole foods plant-based diet can do for you unless you try it. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for those of you that joined me in the live. Hello to all of you who watch on the replay. And I'll be back in the kitchen with you cooking on Tuesday evening. Thanks for watching.